In 1961, the scariest word in American wasn't nuclear, it was automation. Magazines ran the numbers. A sitting president called it the defining problem of the decade. Nobel minds begged Washington to just hand every American a guaranteed income. And then the panic just vanished. Here is the strange part. 60 years later, in 2026, we are running almost the exact same script. Same fear, same headlines, same proposed fix. So the real question isn't, will the machines take our job? It's that they already asked that once. What actually happened? And is 2026 finally the time it is different? The clearest fingerprint of that first panic is one magazine article, February 24th, 1961, Time. The headline, The Automation Jobless, and the subhead is what makes your skin prickle today. Not fire, just not hire. Read that again. The fear wasn't executives firing people, it was them quietly deciding not to hire the next generation. Exactly what people say today about entry level office jobs and AI. One expert called it the nation's second most important problem. They only think about it, peace itself. And they have the receipts. In chemicals, production jobs dropped 3% while output soared 27%. Steel added 20% capacity but needed 17,000 fewer workers. Outemployment fell from 746,000 to 614,000 in 5 years. The Census Bureau ran its tabulation with 50 people. A decade earlier, that took 4,100. One farmer could now feed 24 mouths, up from 15. Sit with that census number 4,100 analysts, replaced by 50. In 1960, that was a tabulating machine. In 2026, that's the entire promise of AI. This wasn't just media noise. The President of the United States said it loud. The major domestic challenge of the decade, not the Cold War, automation. And notice his first instinct, because it's ours too. Here is a detail almost nobody knows. In the very same May 1961 speech, where Kennedy set the goal of landing a man on the moon, he also asked Congress to fund retrain for workers whose skills were being, his words, made obsolete by automation. That request became the Manpower Development and Training Act of 1962, America's first big federal law aimed at technological unemployment. The same breath that launched Apollo also launched America's first Learn a New Skill or Get Left Behind program. Boundless optimism about machines, a real fear of them in one speech. In the 60s, retrain, learn a new trade. In the in the 2010s, learn to code. In 2026, learn to prompt. Same reflex, 60 years apart, but retraining was the modest proposal. A group of America's boldest thinkers want something far more radical. In March 1964, a committee of prominent thinkers mailed an open memo to the President Lyndon Johnson. Their argument was bold. The machines had basically solved the problem of production, so society should stop tying survival to having a job at all. Almost unlimited productive capacity, requiring progressively less human labor. Swap cybernation for AI, and this is a 2026 op ed. And this is the line that echoes loudest. The traditional link between jobs and income, they wrote, is being broken. Wealth made by machines instead of men is still wealth. The proposal, an income for every person and every family, guaranteed, as a matter of right. That's universal basic income. The same exact debate we are having now, proposed in 1964. And these were not cranks, around 35 signatures, including Linus Pauling, a two-time Nobel laureate, and Gunnar Myrdal, who would win the Nobel in economics 10 years later. And the idea traveled. In his final Sunday sermon, 6 days before he was assassinated, Martin Luther King Jr. named that same triple revolution: automation, weaponry, and human rights colliding at once. This was in the air. The future felt like it was arriving, whether anyone was ready or not. So Washington did the most Washington thing imaginable. Faced with panic in the press and a UBI petition on the desk, it formed a commission. In August 1964, Johnson signed a law creating the National Commission on Technology, Automation, and Economic Progress. At the signing, he set the tone. Automation is not our enemy. Our enemies are ignorance, indifference, and inertia, not the machines, us. And they stack it with the heavyweights. Economist Howard Bowen in the chair, future Nobel laureate Robert Solow, the head of IBM, the head of Auto Workers Union, the inventor behind Polaroid, business, labor, and academia in one room. Their assignment is study the machine question for real. They took about 18 months, hearings, data, argument, and in February 1966, they delivered their verdict on whether the machines were coming for everyone's job. That verdict became one sentence, and that sentence is the whole reason I'm making this video. The basic fact is that technology eliminates jobs, not work. Technology destroys specific jobs. It doesn't destroy the total amount of work there is to do. It changes who does what and where, not whether there is anything left to do at all. The Commission landed on two conclusions. One, automation kills particular jobs, not work itself. Two, and this matters, the high unemployment of the 50s was not caused by the machines. It came from rising productivity and a growing workforce hitting one wall, not enough demand. And the recommendations, a guarantee income floor, government as an employer of last resort, lifelong retraining, even a computerized system to match people to jobs. In 1966, they imagined a computer matching workers to openings. That's AI startups today. But while the president worried, the Nobel laureates petitioned and the commission studied for a year and a half. Something happened that none of them forecast. The crisis cured itself. Unemployment didn't climb towards mass joblessness. It fell by roughly half, from 6.7% in 1961 down to 3.5% by 1969. It wasn't a perfectly smooth line. It ticked up in 63, held flat from 66 to 67, but the trend is unmistakable. The exact opposite of what everyone feared. And here is the irony. By the time that commission published its careful warning, with its safety nets and income floor, unemployment was already down to 3.8%, near the lowest of the entire post-war era. The economy answered the question before the expert finished asking it. The machines never stopped advancing that whole decade, and yet the 60s became one of the strongest stretches in American economic history. So, case closed. The doomers were wrong. They will always be wrong. Relax, not so fast, because there is one reason 2026 might be different. Every previous wave of automation hit physical and routine work. The tractor replaced muscle, so the farmer moved up to running a business. The computer replaced the clerk's arithmetic, so the clerk moved up to analysis. Each time, the machine took the lower rung, and humans climbed to the higher one. But generative AI doesn't just take the bottom rung, it reaches straight to the top. Language, judgment, synthesis, creativity. The exact cognitive work every previous wave pushed people toward. So the question gets sharper than it was in 1866. If the machine takes the physical work and the thinking work, what's the next rung up? Past automation always creates higher work to climb into. What do we climb into when the machine can climb to? Let me be fair to both sides. The optimists have a real case. Human wants never stop growing. AI automates tasks, not whole occupation. Cheaper output creates new demand. And there is still deep value in human trust, responsibility, and showing up. But the skeptics have a fair point too. This time is different. It's exactly what they say in 1964, and it wasn't. Yet today's disruption is real and fast. Whether it turns out fine depends just like in the 60s, not in the machines, but on us. That's a real lesson the 1960s hand us. It's not that the automation fears are foolish, it's that technology never decides the outcome by itself. The machines made abundance either way. Whether that became shared prosperity or mass idleness came down to us, humans. Now, zoom out even further to 1930, the start of the Great Depression. The economist John Maynard Keynes made a 100-year prediction. By roughly now, he said, the economic problem, the struggle for material survival, would be largely solved, and humanity's real challenge would become a strange new one: how to use our freedom and leisure well. He even guessed his grandchildren might work a 15-hour week once abundance arrived. And here's the haunting part. He was right about the wealth. We got remarkably productive, but wrong about the leisure. We didn't take the free time. We chose more stuff and more work instead. That gap between the abundance we build and the freedom we never claim is the entire AI question in miniature. The machine can hand us productivity. It cannot choose what we do with it. Here is where I land. In 1900s, nobody could have named the jobs that would define the next century. Software engineer, solar panel installer, flight attendant, YouTuber. We are almost certainly just as blind right now. Maybe our kids will do something we can't even picture. Moral coaches for AI. Who knows? We don't. That's the point. But we have to be standing somewhere on that curb, full of real, legitimate concern about the machines. Let it be 1961, because the people who stood there were genuinely worried, and they were standing on the edge of one of the best decades their economy had. A federal commission answered, will the robots take our jobs 60 years ago? It said, technology eliminates jobs, not work, and it was right. The only real question left is whether that pattern holds a third time, or whether AI is the one thing that finally breaks it. What do you think? Does the pattern hold one more time? Is this time the exception? Please let me know in the comments. If you love what you see, you know what to do. Subscribe, like, and share. Thanks. See you next one.